Don't you just love adding new techniques to your sewing bag of tricks? I hope you have room in your bag for all the things that we have tucked into this show for you. We have a quick ring bearer pillow for a wedding, crazy felting on a machine, and the finer points of stem stitch for your hand embroidery. All of this, along with gridded tucks on a lady's blouse, will have you filling that bag of tricks to the brim. I'm so glad you decided to spend this time with me in my sewing room. Let's get started, shall we? Are going to love this gorgeous silk dupioni jacket. A very, very lightweight and beautiful jacket. Look at the beautiful silk charmeuse, narrow piping, two little buttonholes. And before we go down too much further, I have to show you this magnificently beautiful purple, lavender, and lime green machine embroidery. Beautiful silk charmeuse covered buttons. And this is the technique I want you to really enjoy looking at. These are gridded pin tucks on the band around the bottom of the beautiful jacket and on the sleeves with more of the silk charmeuse tiny baby piping. Is this beautiful or what? Now the gridded pin tucks are very elegant and actually very easy to do. First of all, you draw your lines on the fabric, and you've got to have a bigger piece of fabric, maybe 20-25% bigger than you're going to need because it's going to shrink up a little bit. Then we're going to fold and press each one of them, and this is just a scant 1/8 inch tuck. This is a folded tuck though, not a double needle pin tuck, a folded traditional tuck, and we're going to tuck it all the way across. Then after tucking all the tucks either vertically or horizontally, we're going to do the same thing, going to draw the lines on in the other direction and do the same thing going in the other direction for that magnificent gridded pin tuck. I'm so happy to have as my guest today my friend Shirley Schooley. Shirley is a FOF creative consultant. Shirley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. Glad to be here.
Beautiful jacket.
Thank you.
Oh, show us how you do it.
Well, I will love to do that. And as Martha said, you need to start out with a plain piece of fabric in the fabric of your choice that's about 25 to 30% larger than what you anticipate. But a little experimentation is in order for you. And if you will look here at some of these samples, these are some of the things that I did early on. And you will notice that in some cases I tried out using a contrast thread. I tried out a linen instead of a silk dupioni that was a little bit wider tuck. So I just fooled with it long enough to say I got the effect that I wanted to have. And the first step then, once you decide, and always cut your fabric a little bit larger than what you think is going to be absolutely necessary, you are going to mark those tucks. And I discovered that for this fabric, a 1-inch spacing worked best for me. And I simply laid my ruler here, and I have a ruler that's 1 inch wide. So that made that marking go well. You cannot pull a thread to do this. You could do it the first time, but not the second. So the first thing you do is mark those vertical tucks, as I have done here, and press those tucks so they're ready to be stitched. And as you will see on this piece, I have stitched some of the tucks, and some of them are yet to be stitched. And I have stitched these for my sample in a contrast thread so that you can see them easily. But I think probably you will find, as I did on the blouse, that you're going to like them if they're if the thread matches the fabric. Now, after you have done all of your vertical tucks, you are going to come back and do the horizontal tucks. And if you will notice right here, I have a pin up here, and that is marking the top of my fabric. So that's the top, and that's also, I'm going to therefore want the tucks to run down. I'm going to press them down. And just as we do with all folded tucks, you will like the fabric that you, or the stitching better if you have the needle thread on the top. Now, if you'll come over to the machine, and look here, I have the machine set with a narrow edge foot. Your machine manufacturer may call it something different. And I also have the machine set for a standard 2.5 needle stitch length. And I have also moved my needle position because what I want is that very scant 1/8 inch. You might prefer something a little bit more bold. It'll be a little sportier kind of look if you do that. So I have my machine set, mine sets at a -3.2 needle position. Yours will probably set at something different. If you have a narrow edge foot, edge joining foot, and it looks like it has a little ice skate in it. So I'm going to show you how. So all I need to do is I have this folded and pressed, and I can therefore lower my presser foot, and if my needle is in the right position, it's simply a matter of stitching, and when the fabric butts up against that little blade, you will find that you get this really wonderful little tuck.
See, I just think that's fascinating, and I love the fact that you did tiny tucks for this beautiful silk du peony. Shirley, let's go back over here and look at the way it looks when it's finished, these wonderful gridded tucks.
Well, and one of the things that people want to watch, what I tried to do is make sure that the vertical tucks went away from my body on each side, and that similarly they fold down and then back on each side. So you have to plan a little bit to do this, but
so
it's
the
well
vertical
worth the
tucks
effort.
Go away from your body, and these, the horizontal tucks, all are pressed down.
That's right.
And that's just one more perfection technique, which you are so good at.
Thank you.
Shirley, this is beautiful. And now Shirley has some more sewing inspirations to share with you. Shirley, tell us about this glorious pillow.
Well, this was just a fun thing I did out of a scrap of fabric using my new Grand Dream hoop when it was new. And I took a design that was multicolor and did it in monochrome. And, you know, people really need to change the color sometimes, and they get a whole different effect. So,
beautiful. And you know my very favorites, your beautiful baby bonnets.
Well, this little French bonnet is one of those things that people who love heirloom but don't necessarily want to invest in yards and yards of lace can indulge their love and do something beautiful. Everybody needs a baby gift.
Oh my goodness, what a baby gift this would be. Right. And this sweet little bonnet has just the little Swiss embroidery.
And it goes with this little gown.
I'm going to let you put those over there. And let me hold up this beautiful little christening dress or baby day gown. This is...
Well, I call this my touch of pink. And I think this is great for a portrait dress.
A portrait dress.
Sometimes we don't have a tradition of christening or baby dedication. It would be beautiful on a baby and mother holding it for a portrait. I just think it would be wonderful.
Yes, we can make a portrait even if we don't have the other traditions, can't we? Oh, this is so sweet. A little, you know what this reminds me of? Sunsuits when I was a little girl. We always had this kind of little bonnet. And I think you said there's something very special about this ruffle.
And this is a wonderful, you know, Wendy Schoen vintage design. But it called for yards and yards of Swiss embroidery trim. And sometimes
to go around the
necklace. And sometimes I just like to change it where it's a little bit easier to do. And I
did
less expensive. And I used my gathering foot on that and just made yards of that.
To make your beautiful little yellow ruffle.
Right.
Oh, Shirley, thank you for sharing these
you're
treasures.
welcome.
And now Shirley has a so quick, so easy project to share with you. Shirley, I love what you've done with those little pillows. Tell us about it.
I will. And well, these are going to be little ring barrel pillows. And one of the nice things about ready to embroider things is that it saves us a lot of sewing time. And if you will look at these, first of all, here's a finished pillow. This one happens to have a little lace embellishment on it, so it did not require embroidery. Didn't require much sewing. I brought along a couple of pillows that are just samples of what you might be able to find, so you can find something to suit everybody's taste and everybody's desires. And the secret is to start, and I'm starting here with just a plain one on this one.
A little purchased pillow.
A little purchased pillow. These are 8-inch square pillows. And you need to rip the back if you're going to put anything very much on the front so that you have access to the front part of it. Fortunately, they rip pretty easily. You just take those stitches out, and you will notice here I have a pin here because you will like it better if you will keep these two parts together, because then it just sews right back down to your original pillow after you've done your embellishment. Now, in this particular one, I have it partially complete, of course. But what I did here is I did a little embroidery, a little red work style embroidery and some pretty pinks. Of course, you'd want to stay with the color scheme your bride prefers. And these little ribbons I actually caught in the embroidery, and those are the ribbons, of course, to put the rings on the pillow.
Oh, the ring bearer pillow.
And then I would also take these wonderful ribbons and put bows at the corners. Sometimes you have a bride who doesn't want bows, so you wouldn't want to do it if that were the case. This ribbon will go on the back before you sew the back on, so that your little boy can carry that ribbon without, or carry that pillow without losing it as it comes down the aisle. The same thing would be true here. I have an example on this one of a very elegant, very simple, for the bride who prefers not to have lots of fuss, if you would. It's very elegant, single letter monogram. And I actually did one of these one time, Martha, for a black and white wedding, and the monogram was in black.
Oh, well,
if you can imagine,
very
tailored
color right now, the black and white.
That's right. More little older brides often will choose that, and it was a very elegant kind of pillow. So lots of opportunities to do your thing.
Talk about a wonderful wedding gift, Shirley.
Yes.
To give the ring bearer pillow, I think that's quite enough of a wedding present myself.
Well, you could put both of the bride and groom's initials on it, or something special.
And the date, I mean, the
that's
date
right.
of the wedding. Okay.
Easy.
Shirley, I just love anything associated with weddings.
I do
Thank
too.
you so much. And now I have an incredibly wonderful and fascinating technique to share with you. I'm pleased to have as my guest today Hope Yoder. Hope is the owner of Designs by Hope Yoder Incorporated, and she is a Martha Pullen licensed teacher, a designer for So Beautiful magazine, and a teacher at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion in Huntsville. Hope, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha.
This beautiful bag you've done, is this what you're going to be talking about today?
I'm going to talk about some crazy quilting techniques, how you can take that and make it charming by doing some charming crazy felting.
And this one just has lots of crazy quilting on it, doesn't it?
Lots
And
of
machine embroidery.
Correct.
Show us the felting.
Here's another version of some crazy felting. This is some traditional crazy quilting done with a line and strip fold and fabric method. And I've also got some bobbin work that's done on silk dupioni strips. We've got some texture with silk dupioni fabric, some plain silk dupioni. What we're going to talk about today is all this beautiful texture. Believe it or not, this piece of fabric looked like this when we got started.
Let's see some of that texturizing, felting, punching, whatever one wants to call it.
Well, the materials that you'll use for punching or for doing some felting would be silk dupioni. It lends itself beautifully for texturizing. We've also got some silk satin ribbon, and this is a wide ribbon. When you punch through just the ribbon, you'll get a velvet texture effect. And one of my favorite things to use is silk organza that's cut on the bias. I've got a piece of plain silk dupioni fabric. One of the nice things about this machine is it's very easy. There are no threads, no bobbin case, just a nice safety guard and some barbed needles that creates texture. I can sew slow or fast, and you can see the beautiful texture that I get.
And that's it. No threads, no bobbins.
No threads. I could almost do no hands.
If you want me to stop. That's all right. I guess it makes it even pretty there, doesn't it?
Let me get a little more of this done so you can see the difference between flat fabric and texturized fabric. I'm going to take this out so you can see the difference. It's the same fabric with the texture and flat. It's really hard to find fabric like that in the fabric stores, and if you did, it'd cost a fortune. So now you can take this felted fabric and do some machine embroidery. I've used a sticky type of stabilizer, and then I've just basted the fabric, laying it over the sticky stabilizer, and done some beautiful machine embroidery. Another thing that you can do is you can create fabric and then use it in machine embroidery designs, as we have here in the little tag. I've taken some duck cloth, some silk organza, some little fibers, and parts and pieces of yarn. So let me take this over to show you what happens when we actually felt little trims to a foundation fabric.
So you just put a lot of things on top of each other, is that right?
This is just like when you were back in kindergarten and you cut little pieces. It's very fun. At our house, we keep a little basket of scraps, and then we throw them all in a basket, and when we want something fun to do, we just punch, see what works well and what doesn't work well. That's how we found out that punching through the duck cloth works beautifully. Then you could add a little piece of yarn and keep building layer after layer, and then you'd have a nice piece of fabric that you could do whatever you'd like to with.
And all of that was on duck cloth this time?
All of that on duck cloth.
Well, Hope, this is certainly fascinating. Thank you so much. And now we have some hand embroidery ideas to share with you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest Wendy Schoen. Wendy is the designer of Petite Crochet Patterns. She is a contributor to Sew Beautiful magazine and a teacher at the Martha Pullen School of Art Fashion in Huntsville. Wendy has studied really a lot of places, but most notably in Madeira and at the Royal School of Needlework. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Today, Martha, I brought something really fun and interesting. Look at this, the lid of this basket, this sewing basket that I made some years ago. If you focus on the bow, you'll see that it is slightly raised, and it looks a lot like satin stitch, but it's not. It's a whole lot easier. This stitch is referred to as raised stem, and I'm going to show you how easy and quick it is to do. So if we go to the hoop, we'll look down and we'll see that I have drawn a sort of a two-pointed shape. Now, this type of stitching can be done on just about any elongated shape, but I wanted to show you how it works with a tapered point. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to tie on inside the area with a couple of little back stitches. Now, I could put these stitches anywhere because this whole area will be covered up eventually. But just make sure that your little threads don't come out, so tie it securely. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to stitch some bars or threads across, stitches if you want to call them. They're actually called bars. And these bars are going to be approximately 1/4 of an inch apart, more or less. There's no set rule to that, but just based on the size of the shape that I'm working. Now, notice I'm just basically doing a back stitch, going up to the edge and back. The one thing I want to point out is I don't think it's a good idea to pull these too tightly because you'll find out, but just take my word for it. Leave them a little on the loose side. Remember, you're going to have to go back in there and sew through those bars. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the next two. So this one shows the bars in place. And now I'm going to begin my buttonhole stitches, which go across the bars. So I'm going to have to tie on again with a new thread since I've run out. If you have enough thread, you don't need to do that. But it's best not to run out of thread in the middle of a row. Okay, so I tie on exactly the same way. Now, because this shape has 2 points, I'm going to work the center row first, from point to point. Now, this stitch, like I said, is a stem stitch, a raised stem stitch. So I'm going to actually bring the eye of the needle through underneath the bar, and we're not going to be sewing into the fabric at all. Almost forgot the name, Martha.
That's all right.
Okay. So you see what I'm doing? I'm just laying my stem stitches across. And stem stitches are, remember, you want to hold the thread down. Now, this shape will eventually be filled with continuous rows of the same stitch over and over and over. But here's what, oops, I lost a bar. Well, let's just pretend like that was my last. I'll tell you how we can fix it. I'll just take it out. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now what I want to do on the last stitch is I want to bring it down into the point. And then I'm going to work the stitch the opposite way. I'm going to bring the stitch up on the edge of the piece. I want to turn my work around so that I can continue to do a stem stitch, use the eye of the needle, and of course you're going to need a thimble for this, or you can use a tapestry needle. I'm going to continue on and on with my raised stem. So this is, as you can see, this is not very difficult to do. It's just going to take some time to get all the rows in. So now once you get to the end and you want to end off, finish the last row of course, bring it in slightly inward so that you have, you're keeping the edge of your shape intact. In other words, you won't want to come out the same space on the end because then you'll lose your point. So once you get this completely filled in, and you do want these stitches to be somewhat on the tight side, this is what it will look like once it's complete. And as you can see, this is the same shape. The edges are nice and smooth. That comes from the entry point and the exit point staying right on the edge. And then I have one row next to the other. I probably could have put another row or two in there, but you can see the effect you get. It's a nice raised effect. I'm going to show you the back. The back just has the stitches from the bar and the tie on and off stitches, and that's all there is to it. So I think you should try some right away because I know you're going to love it.
Oh, that is beautiful and fascinating, Wendy. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to share a piece from my vintage collection with you. This beautiful blouse I purchased at a flea market in London. This has the most interesting collar. It's very unusual to find fabric alone on the collar. And this one has little pin tucks, by hand of course. And honestly, it's sometimes hard to tell what is Swiss and what is hand embroidered, but I have looked at this over and over again from the back, and I believe this is totally hand embroidered. Look at the way the open lace, almost a crocheted looking lace, opens. And then if you'll notice the double needle pin tucks, except they aren't double needle pin tucks, you can make them with a double needle, but the wonderful pin tucks that come down. And let me just turn this around so you can see that it is just as beautiful on the back as it is on the front. And of course, it always opens up all the way down the back, and the original buttons are still on this blouse. The sleeves are absolutely magnificent also. Again, a really, really nice look of pin tucks, and then these are released pin tucks here. Absolutely beautiful, holding in the fullness of the blouse, and then more pin tucks on the cuff, and of course some beautiful hem stitching by hand. The hem stitch was all pulled out by hand. I'm telling you, that is one beautiful blouse, and it took a lot of time to make it. I have a Sewing from the Heart letter from Carol Price. I don't know where Carol is from, but she sent this to me. While this is not a sewing project, it is a charity project. I like to call it spare time for charity instead of spare change. I am a knitter, and I keep a knitting bag ready at all times for car trips, errands, and waiting times. I knit chemo caps. So far, I have knit over 500 caps. With the caps taking about 1.5 hours, it is amazing how many caps you can knit while you are a passenger in a car, waiting for your child during practice, waiting for the movie to start, waiting in line. I really love making these caps. Well, Carol, I just thank you so much for your knitting these wonderful caps for women during a very, very difficult time when they need the chemo caps. Thank you, Carol. And thank you for joining me in my sewing room today. I hope you had a good time. Won't you come back next time?